All right, does this look like a complicated machine to you? No, not really compared to some of them in the book and some of the ones that we're doing. But even this one can be simplified. We can take advantage of some of the shortcuts that JFlap offers and some of the common variations on Turing machines that are covered in the textbooks. For example, one of the common patterns that you can see, for example, in Q1 and Q4 is hunting forward in one direction or another for a specific character. In Q1 and Q4, we're looking for C. In Q3, we're hunting for a specific character. We're looking for blanks. Now, there are two notations that JFlap supports that we can use to sort of simplify that machine. One is the exclamation mark in front of a character means anything except. The other is the tilde sign, which stands for the character just read from the tape. Actually, it depends on where you put the tilde. If you write it in the output slot, it's the character just read. If you write it in the input, it's any character. So I can use that combination, for example, to say that what's really going on, let's say in Q3 to start with, what's really going on in Q3 is that I will take anything that's not a blank and simply write out whatever it was as the output, the character just read as the output, and move to the left. So let's get rid of all those little single character transitions. And I can instead say, not blank, rewrite it with tilde, and then move to the left. And that means the same thing as the 4 or 5 transitions that we had there before. Okay. And I can do similar things with Q1 and Q4. Here I'm really saying, as long as I don't see a C, just write into the output whatever character I just read in and move to the right. So let's get rid of those two little loop things. And we'll replace it with not C. Go ahead and write out whatever we had and then move to the right. And then we'll do the same thing on Q4. As long as it's not C, just write out whatever you had and keep moving to the right. All right, let's make sure this actually works before I go any further. So let's try this on ABB, CABB. All right, looking at the A, I should replace that with a blank. Now I should skip over anything that's not C, but not change it on the tape. I should write out the same character I've just read in. That looks good. That looks good. Whew, that worked. All right, then we move past the C. We're looking at A, so we mark it as an X. And now in Q3, we're saying, as long as this isn't a blank, just write out whatever's there and keep moving to the left. Oh, it worked. And then when we see the blank, we're back in Q0. So I think we're good. Let's go ahead and step through the other side of the automaton. So I'm looking at a B. Now I should move forward over anything that's not a C. And then when I reach the C, make the transition, move over any X's. I'm looking at a B, so mark that with an X and move left. And now again, I should move over anything that's not a blank until I hit the blank, and then I make the transition to Q0. All right, so that appears to work. Last step, we accept. Okay, so that's, fewer transitions that we have to write in explicitly with that approach. Any questions on that? Now, there's another thing that you can do, and this is not a JFlap notation. These two things you could argue are pretty much, just shortcuts that JFlap accepts in its input notation. But one of the things that's discussed in your textbook as a very common refinement of the programming style for Turing machines is the notion of storing a character in the state. And the idea here is that if you look at what's happening Q0, Q1, Q2, Q3 versus Q0, Q4, Q5, Q3, we've got two branches that are very symmetric. And they're only there because, in essence, when I'm making the transition to Q3, I have to remember whether the thing that started this off a long time ago was an A or a B, back when I first left Q0. Well, what that, in essence, says is that the very existence of Q4 and Q5 on top of Q1 and Q2 means that just by the choice of states, I have effectively stored the character that I processed way back when I left Q0. And so one of the things we can do is we can think about a notion of allowing our Turing machines to have a finite number of storage cells, each of which can hold a single character, which, because our input alphabet is finite as well, means it only has a finite number of possibilities. And we can design a Turing machine based on the notion that it remembers, for however long we need it to, one character at a time per such cell that we want to set up. And that would then mean that we wouldn't have to program a whole bunch of symmetric branches. They're just based upon which character we saw early on. So there is a notation for that in JFlap. And the notation, well, let me do it first in the text file. So the notation for that looks something like A, comma, B, or whatever your character is, and you can list more than two. A right curly set bracket, and then a single character variable name, which should be a symbol that is not in your input. So what this means is accept either A or B, storing it in W. And so we can do that to reduce the total number of states that we need. If I say here, accept either A or B, storing it in W, still replace it with a blank, whatever it was, and still move to the right after doing it. Then when I come over to Q2, I don't want to just look for A, because maybe what got me here was a B. What I want to look for is W. There is whatever is stored in W. And so I will say, if you see W, mark it with an X. So this W is not an input character. It is a variable name that we introduced over here. Generally, I like to use letters from near the end of the alphabet for my variable names. Of course, I also like to use letters from near the end of the alphabet for things like markers that I'm inserting. So you sort of have to go by context and look and see if I've introduced that thing as a variable name or not. Now let's just, because I don't want this to be non-deterministic, let's take out that transition on B for now and see if this actually works. So let's try it for ABA, C, let's do ABB, so that we make sure that it's not just giving us a free pass on W whenever we see it. So first, looking in A, we will store that A and W, replace it with a blank on the tape, and move to the right. Then we will move over any characters that are not C without changing them. Move past the C, move past any X's. We don't have any. Now, are we looking at the character we stored in W? Yes, we're looking in A, and that's what we last stored in W. So we should move forward and then move back to the left and reposition. Now we're going to look at B. So we should put B in W and move into Q1. All right, move over any characters that are not C, move past the C, move past any X's. Now again, the last character we stored in W was B, so we should match against the W here in the input position, rewriting it with an X, and start moving left. Now, so far, this would have worked if it was just treating W as matches anything. All right, but now we're going to see, I hope, that it doesn't do that, that it actually does pay attention to what we stored in there. Because now we'll put A and W and move to Q1, move past the C, move past the X's. Now we've stored A and W most recently, but we're looking at a B, so this should fail. And by golly, it does. So that means that not only do we not need that transition that I deleted a moment ago, but since there's now no longer any way to reach Q4, we can get rid of Q4. Since that means there's no way to get to Q5, we can get rid of Q5. And we have a considerably smaller automaton to deal with. Okay, so it's certainly available to you to use on your own as well. Any questions on that?